In today's lesson, you are going to learn the 5 steps that will help you speak English fluently. Not just understand it, actually start speaking it. Are you ready? Well then, let's jump right in. Step number 1 is the listen step. Let me break this down for you. It's important to listen first. You see, you need to listen to a 2 to 3 minute real conversation between native speakers. Not just people speaking English, they need to be native English speakers. And turn your closed captioning on. You don't want to look at a scripted textbook dialogue. You want actual people talking the way they really talk. This is so important. You see, you need to watch it, then read along following the captions, and let it wash over you before anyone explains a single word, before you look up the definition of a vocabulary word, before you look up the meaning of an expression. Simply watch the conversation. Now, why is this step so important? Before we see an example, why is this step so important? Here's reason number 1. You see, you, my friend, even though you are super intelligent, yes, you, very intelligent, you cannot reproduce a sound your ear has never truly absorbed. Your ear has never really gotten accustomed to. Reading English and hearing real English are 2 different skills. Listen to me. Reading English and hearing real English are 2 different skills. And the one you've practiced the least is the one speaking actually depends on. Reason number 2, why this step is so important. Real conversations carry the rhythm, the pauses, the overlaps, the throwaway words that textbooks delete. This is where natural English actually lives. And you've been studying a cleaned up version of it. When you use your textbooks, you're learning English, but it's different from real life English. And reason number 3, captions let your eyes and ears connect the same moment. You'll see it happening in a few moments. You stop guessing and start noticing. And noticing is the first quiet step towards speaking. So, step number 1 is the listen step. I want you to listen to a short 2-minute clip of a conversation I, a native English speaker, had with another individual who is also a native English speaker. Listen very closely.
How would you describe like a real or true friend?
Wow, so I agree with everything you said. I think we have a very similar viewpoint when it comes to friend and the definition of a true friend. So I'll add 3 details. The first one I'll say is a friend is someone who recognizes when I need them, right? Like I'm a giver. I normally am always trying to take care of other people. And sometimes that person who takes care of others, it's hard to know when they need the help. So a friend can really recognize like, hey, Tiff, you're smiling, you're okay, but I'm seeing something. Are you really good? So I recognize my friends that are close, they can recognize immediately like, okay, something's up. So just recognizing, when I need you, whether it be like a check-in, a daily check-in or a weekly check-in, like, hey girl, how's the week? Because those things are small, but they actually are big. Like little things become big things. So just whether it's a weekly check-in or depending on where we are, like even if it's every other week, like, hey girl, just seeing how you're doing. One of my girlfriends, she called me yesterday and we weren't able to talk long because I was recording, but she's one of those friends, like ride or die. She'll be in my wedding, like she'll call, and it's not every week, but when she calls, she's like, you were on my mind and I wanted to check on you. So it's those check-ins make a big difference. Then also the spur of the moment meetups. I realize I like those too because every once in a while I want to get some Indian food. I want to get some Mexican food.
But you don't want to go alone.
Right, I'm like, girl, what you doing? And it's like, I'm down, let's go. So I've realized that also spontaneity is also makes a friendship go deeper. And then being able to have different conversations. In a conversation, we can laugh. I mean, tears laughing because it's so funny. We can also cry because maybe somebody's boyfriend did do something, like maybe something happened. So we can laugh, we can cry, and we can also go deep. So you see, that conversation, it was a clip of a conversation that I had with another individual. Her name is Carly. She's an amazing English teacher. She teaches in the Speak English with Tiffani Academy. We had a conversation about friendship. Notice it was a 2-minute clip. Notice how many new things you heard as she and I were speaking with each other. This leads us now to step number 2. Again, helping you speak English fluently. Step number 2 is the learn step. So what is this step all about? Here's the breakdown. You see, we pull 3 real terms straight from the conversation, but you don't get the definition first. Listen closely. You get the terms, but you don't want to look up the definition first. You get 3 real life situations where the terms show up and you guess what it means. Then we reveal the definition, why we're giving our brain triggers, connections. So let me break this down, why this is so important before we get to the application. Here's reason number 1. When you guess a word's meaning or an expression's meaning or a term's meaning from real situations, your brain builds a stronger pathway than when you just read a definition. You own it instead of borrowing it. You are owning the definition. Reason number 2, again, step 2, the learn step. Seeing one word across 3 different contexts shows you how flexible and alive it is. That's the difference between a word you recognize and a word you can actually use. And reason number 3. Guessing first means you're doing the thinking, and the words you fight a little to understand are the words that finally come out of your mouth when you need them. This is why this step is so important and why it's important for you to guess. So here's the first application. Here's a term that was used during that short clip. Ride or die. Ride or die. Now, here's situation A. She's my ride or die. We've been inseparable since we were 6. She's my ride or die. We've been inseparable since we were 6. Guess what this term ride or die actually means. Here's the second example. The second example is, he stayed up all night helping me move apartments, then drove me to the airport at 4 a.m. That's a ride or die right there. Once again, what are we seeing? We're seeing ride or die, and we're seeing this situation. Situation number 3. I don't need 100 friends. I need 2 or 3 ride or die people who will show up when everything falls apart. So now you're kind of guessing, oh, ride or die in relation to friendships. What does the term ride or die mean? It means, this is something we're looking at now at a dialogue. One of my girlfriends, she called me yesterday. She's one of those friends like ride or die. She'll be in my wedding. She'll call, and it's not every week, but when she calls, she's like, you were on my mind and I want to check on you. That's how I actually used it when I was in the conversation. And here's the definition. A ride or die is a person who is completely loyal to you. Someone who stays by your side through anything, good or bad. It comes from the idea of someone who would ride with you through any trouble rather than abandon you. It's warm, deeply loyal, and very common in casual American speech. So you see, now you understand it. There were 3 example situations and then a reminder of how I used it in the conversation. Ride or die. What about this second term? Again, coming from the conversation. Spur of the moment. All right, we have a situation. We didn't plan anything. It was totally spur of the moment. We just grabbed our jackets and drove to the beach. Again, we didn't plan anything. We just grabbed our jackets and went to the beach. Spur of the moment. What about this second example situation? He proposed spur of the moment. No ring, no speech. He just couldn't wait another second. In our third situation, I'm not usually spontaneous, but last weekend I booked a spur of the moment flight and left the next morning. Spur of the moment. I think you're kind of guessing now, right? Now listen to the way I used it during the conversation in the dialogue. I said, then also the spur of the moment meetups. I realize I like those too because every once in a while I want to get some Indian food. I want to get some Mexican food. Carly said, but you don't want to go alone. Then I responded, right. I'm like, girl, what you doing? And it's like, I'm down, let's go. So I've realized that spontaneity also makes a friendship go deeper. So you see, Spur of the moment. What's the definition? I think you guessed it. Spur of the moment means something done suddenly, without planning ahead, acting on a feeling right when it hits you. I paired it with spontaneity, which is the noun for that same quality of acting freely and in the moment. So we have spur of the moment. Again, step 2 is learning the terms from the conversation you listened to or watched in step number 1. Here's the third term. Again, application of step number 2. The third term is go deep. Situation: I love that with her, I don't have to keep it light. We can go deep and it never feels awkward. Here's the second situation using this expression. By 2 a.m., we'd stopped joking and were talking about things I've never told anyone. We went deep. Situation number 3. Some friends you joke around with. Her, I can go deep with. The real stuff, the heavy stuff. I can go deep. Now listen to how I used it in the conversation. Here's the dialogue. And then being able to have different conversations. In a conversation, we can laugh. I mean, tears laughing because it's so funny. We can also cry because maybe somebody's boyfriend did do something. So we can laugh, we can cry, and we can also go deep. So what does go deep mean? It means to move past surface level small talk into meaningful, emotional, or personal conversation. It signals real closeness, the ability to talk about things that actually matter, not just everyday chatter. We say go deep. So these 3 terms came from the conversation we watched and listened to in step number 1. So step number 1, listen. Step number 2, learn the terms. And step number 3 is analyze. This is a very important phase for you. Important steps, tongue twister, for you as an English learner. So what does this actually mean? Analyzing. So you've got the words from step number 2. Now we're going to see how I, Tiffani, put them together into a full answer. We're going to break my response down into a diagram showing exactly how I built my response, which fundamentals of English conversation I used, and in what order. This is the invisible structure underneath natural speech. There's an invisible structure that you as an English learner need to understand because native English speakers, we know this structure. So 3 reasons why step 3, the analyze step, is so important. Reason number 1, fluent speakers aren't talking randomly. We're not. We're following patterns that sometimes we don't even know we have. Once you see the pattern, you stop feeling like fluency is magic. Fluency is not magic. It's knowing the structure, understanding the patterns, understanding the fundamentals. Reason number 2, this is the shift from understanding English to building English. You move from passenger to driver. And reason number 3, why step 3 is so important. A diagram makes the invisible suddenly visible. You'll never unsee how native speakers actually construct their answers. So let's dive deeper into this. Here's the application for step number 3. Again, analyze step. Let's say the question was, how would you describe a true friend? Now we're going to look at the structure I used for my response. All right. So the first thing, I connected. I said, I agree with everything you said. We have a very similar viewpoint. I acknowledge the other person first. This is the formula, part 1. Then part 2, the signpost. I said, so I'll add 3 details. I'm telling the listener what's coming. Again, we're looking at the structure I used. First, I acknowledged, hey, I see where you're coming from. Next, I gave the signpost. Here are my 3 details. We're looking at the structure I was using. All right. So detail number 1, what did I say? I recognize when I need them. Speaking about a friend. I gave an opinion. A friend notices. The reason, I'm a giver. It's hard to know when I need help. Example, hey Tiff, are you really good? Plus the check-ins. All right. Look at the second detail. Notice this pattern. Spur of the moment meetups. I'm giving details about friendship. Then I give an opinion. Spontaneity matters. Then I give a reason. You go deeper. And I give an example. I want to get Indian food, Mexican food. Let's go. And detail number 3, what's the pattern? Different conversations between friends. The opinion, a friend covers it all. The example, we can laugh, we can cry, and we can also go deep. Something is missing under the 3rd detail. Here we go. Notice, detail 3 skips the reason and goes straight to examples. That is not a mistake. Native speakers don't always use every slot. The structure is a tool, not a cage. Again, the structure is a tool, not a cage. So, analyzing my response, I started off by acknowledging what she said, even though that wasn't part of the clip. I said, okay, I see what you're saying. Then I gave a signpost. I'll give 3 details. Then I gave the details, but under the details, we had my opinion. Next, what? Yes, a reason. And finally, an example. So detail at the top, then an opinion, then a reason, then an example. Now, I'm using a structure, but again, the 3rd detail showed that things can change underneath. When you know the structure, when you know the tools, you can use them interchangeably. This leads us now to step number 4. Pay attention. Step number 4 is the apply step. So we analyzed my response. Now it's time to apply. So what does this mean? We turn the pattern from step number 3 into formulas. We're going to make 2 of the formulas. Then we pick one question and answer it 2 times. Once with each formula. The same question, but 2 different fluent answers. Again, step number 4 is all about applying. We found the structure. We found the pattern in step 3. Now in step 4, it's time for us to apply it. So why is this so important? Before we see the application, why is this so important? First, a formula removes the panic. Instead of freezing and searching for words, you have a track to run on. Think about it. I said detail, what's next? Opinion, what's next? Reason, and example. You already learned the structure that we analyzed in step 3. Reason number 2. Answering the same question in 2 different ways shows you there's no single correct answer to chase. There's just your answer, built on a structure that works. When you have a strong structure, you can move forward. When you have a strong structure, you'll be able to speak English fluently. And reason number 3, this is where recognition becomes production. You stop collecting English and start generating it. So let's take a look at this in real life. So 2 formulas that we pulled from my structure, all right? Here is the first formula. Formula A, right here. Opinion, reason, example. Remember we said after the detail, opinion, reason, example. So you're going to state what you think, explain or say why, and then give a real moment from your life. This is formula number 1. Formula number 2, or formula B on the screen. Connect, give the signpost, and list with examples. So you're acknowledging the other person, saying how many points you'll make, and then you walk them through with quick examples. All right, so we understand this. So what does this look like? All right, what does this look like? So looking now at formula 1, using formula 1, the question, what makes a good friendship last? That's the question. We're using formula A, opinion, reason, example. Here's the response. I think a good friendship lasts when both people stay honest with each other. This is the opinion. Because the moment you start hiding how you really feel, distance creeps in. That's the reason. My closest friend and I had a hard conversation last year where I told her something hurt me. And instead of breaking us, it made us stronger. That's the example. Now, we understand again because we have the first formula. Now, let's look at the second example. This example is using formula B. Connect, signpost, and then list with examples. Here we go. Same question. What makes a good friendship last? Here we go. I agree with what you said, and I'd add 2 things. So we connect and we have a signpost. First, consistency. Like a friend who checks in even when life is busy. That's the point plus the example. And second, the ability to go deep. We can laugh about nothing, but we can also talk about the heavy stuff. That's the point plus the example. Again, what did you see? The application. We had these formulas and we used the formulas to answer the question. This is step 4, applying what you actually analyzed, which leads us to step number 5, the action step. So let's break down this action step. Again, this is how you speak English fluently, starting first with the conversation, the clip from a real conversation between 2 native speakers. Here's the breakdown of step number 5, the action step. Now it leaves the screen. You get 3 questions in 3 different real situations. You apply one of the step 4 formulas to each and you produce the answers yourself. Remember, in step 4, we had 2 formulas that were created based on what we analyzed in step number 3. Why is this so important to apply the formulas for yourself to real questions? Reason number 1, fluency was never going to come from one more video. Even the videos you're watching from me online, fluency doesn't just come from the video. It comes, listen closely, my friend, it comes from the moment you actually open your mouth and use what you learned. Reason number 2, 3 different situations prove your formula travels. It's not a trick that only works once. It's a tool you carry everywhere. When you use the formula and apply it to 3 different situations, 3 different questions, and it works, that's when you know you have a winner. And reason number 3, the gap between the learner and the speaker is the exact step. Everyone watches, only some act. I want you to act. So here's the practical application looking at the situation. Again, here's our formula: opinion, reason, example. Once again, opinion, reason, example, our first formula. So opinion, reason, example. Here's the situation. Casual with a friend. What kind of person do you enjoy spending your weekends with? That's the situation. That's the question. Again, the formula: opinion, reason, example. Here's the response based on that formula. I enjoy spending weekends with easygoing people. Opinion. Because after a long week, I don't want to plan everything. I want to feel light. That's the reason. Last Saturday, a friend texted me spur of the moment to grab tacos, and it ended up being the best part of my week. That's the example. Once again, opinion, reason, example. Look at this second situation. Getting to know someone. Here's the question. How do you know when you can really trust someone? Here's the formula again. Opinion, reason, example. Here we go. I know I can trust someone when they show up in the small moments. Opinion. Because anyone can be there for the big stuff, but the daily check-ins reveal who actually cares. The reason. I have a friend who calls just to say you were on my mind. That's when I knew she was a ride or die. That's the example. Again, opinion, reason, example. You understand? That's situation number 1. What about the next situation based on our formula? Here's this next formula. Connect, signpost, list with examples. Connect, signpost, list with examples. Here's the situation right here. A slightly deeper conversation. What do you value most in the people closest to you? All right. Again, formula, connect, signpost, list with examples. Here we go. I'd say 2 things matter most to me. That's the connecting and the signpost. First, people I can be fully honest with, no pretending. That's the point plus an example. And second, range. Friends I can laugh with until I cry, but also go deep with when something real is happening. That's another point plus an example. You saw it, right? Again, taking action using the formulas we have based on the structure we analyzed from the conversation we listened to. This is how you learn to speak English fluently. Now, if you want to keep studying with me, you enjoyed this lesson, all you have to do is go to www.speakenglishwithttiffany.com/365system, and I'll talk to you next time. You still there? Ha ha! You know what time it is. It's story time. Hey, hey, hey. I said it's story time. All right. This is a story about something that happened to me last week. And it's something that I will remember, I think, for the rest of my life. So, last week, I was working in my office, preparing lessons for you, going through different English content and making sure everything made sense. And I was working hard and I was enjoying what I was doing. And all of a sudden, my stomach started to growl. I said, uh-oh, it's time for me to get some food. It was about 1 or 1:30 and I had a smoothie for breakfast, so I really didn't eat anything of substance for breakfast. So I was quite hungry. So I said, okay, let me take a pause. I put my computer to sleep and I said, let me just run to Subway. Subway's a very popular sandwich shop here in America, and I love Subway. I said, okay, let me just run to Subway and I'll get a sandwich, right? So I get in my car and I go down the street. It's not too far from where I live, maybe about 5 minutes, if that, just 2 or 3 lights and it's right there. And I have a certain way of making my sandwich. So I get to the Subway, walk in. Very nice ladies work there. So I say, hey, I'm going to get a foot long veggie. So I'm telling her, I'm like, okay, I want some olive oil on it first, then some oregano, make your mouth water, then a little salt and pepper. Then can you put that in the oven for about 15 seconds, bring it out. And I was giving her the instructions, right? And she was like, okay, ma'am, what else would you like? So we were having a good interaction when all of a sudden the door opened. Now, I was the only one in the shop at the time, and it's natural for the door to open because customers are coming in and out. However, out the corner of my eye, there was something different about this individual. So it was a young man, maybe in his 30s, and he walked in, and I turned my head slightly, and then I turned back to the woman. But one thing women can do, I might look at you for 5 seconds. But in that 5 seconds, I have looked at you from head to toe. I know what you're wearing. I know what's going on in your face. Again, I knew everything. I knew visually. I had grabbed everything in that 5 seconds, which is why guys be careful because women, we know, right? So I looked at him and I turned back. Now my immediate thought was, he might be homeless. That was my immediate thought. Just the way he was dressed. He walked in fine. He didn't say anything. The way he was dressed. And when I turned for that 5-second period, the way he looked at me, and even though I turned, I said, maybe he is homeless. But I didn't want to assume. But he had a t-shirt, undershirt on, and some shorts. They were a little dirty, but again, it was hot, so he could have been outside working. So I didn't want to make an assumption, but something inside was telling me this young man is homeless. Right? So he walked closer to where I was standing. And I said, okay, I don't want to make an assumption. I always like to help people, right? I always like to help those in need. So I don't want to make an assumption, but I feel like I'm reading him correctly. So the lady is making my sandwich. She puts my sandwich in the oven and I turn to look back at him. And it was as if his eyes were crying out to me. Like, are you a safe person? Can I ask you for money? Is it okay? And I immediately said to him, get what you want. That is literally what I said. I said, get what you want. And it was as if this peace came over him, this relief came over him like, okay, she gets it. Without me explaining anything, she gets it. I said, my guy, get what you want. He said, are you sure? I said, get a foot long of whatever you want. You want some chips? You want some drink? Again, it was unspoken. So then he said, thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much. So he proceeds to go around me to where the other woman that worked there was standing, and he proceeded to tell her the sandwich he wanted. And I said, get whatever you want. And so I said, what's your name? He said, oh, my name is Walter. I said, hi, Walter. My name is Miss Tiffany. He said, hi, Miss Tiffany. Nice to meet you. I said, nice to meet you too, Walter. And he just proceeded to explain to me the situation. He said, it's just really hard out here. He said, we're homeless. It's my brother and I. My mom is here, but she's in another city. And it's just hard. We're trying to make ends meet. We're trying to stay at this hotel, but the prices go up every week. So it's hard for us. And we're from Florida. And I could tell the desperation in his voice. Like, he's making an effort, but it's very hard. And to be honest, Maryland is not cheap. It is quite expensive. So I'm listening to him. And the moment I heard him say, I have a younger brother, he's up at the other store, I said, get a sandwich for your brother. He said, no. I said, get a sandwich for your brother. Get him some chips, get him a drink. It's totally okay. And I could see how appreciative he was. Again, I love helping other people. And I want to encourage you, always help people. You just don't know someone's story. You don't know what they've been through. And to have someone care about you and to help you, it means a lot. So he said, he said, I have a job interview on Monday. This was Friday when I saw him. He said, it's on Monday. I said, Walter, let me ask you something. I said, are you okay with me writing it down? Because I want to pray for you so that you get this job on Monday. He was like, oh, ma'am, thank you so much. I was like, of course. So I wrote his name. I have an application on my phone. And I said, I'm going to pray for you. And I did pray every single day in the morning and the evening. And hopefully Walter got the job because it was last week. Again, Monday of this week is when his interview was, but I haven't seen him. So again, we're just standing there, we're talking. And he's like, yeah, it's been rough. And I said, okay. I said, hey. And he said, no, you know what? When I get this job, I'm going to get the job and I'm going to find you and I'm going to pay you back, because I also slid him some money. And I tried to do it discreetly, again, because when you're in a situation where you can't pay for your own lodging, you're homeless, sometimes you feel like people look at you in a condescending way. You feel like people are looking at you like, psh, what's wrong with you? Like, you can't take care of yourself. And I didn't want him to think I was looking at him like that. So I tried to slide him the money in a way that no one else would know. And he said, when I get my job, I'm going to pay you back. And I said, Walter, instead of paying me back, basically pay it forward. Someone else is going to need help. And when they come into your presence, if you recognize they need help, Walter, remember this moment and just help them. That is good enough. And he looked at me and he said, can I hug you? That was the moment. You see, again, remember I said Walter walked in and I could tell he was kind of homeless. It looked like he'd either been working outside for a lot. So, we all need a shower at the end of the day. I could tell he was in need of a shower. Walter said, can I hug you? And my immediate response was, of course. And I hugged him and he hugged me. And in that moment, it was another reminder. We are all connected in some way. And sometimes life gets hard. Sometimes you may lose a job. Sometimes something bad might happen to you. You're still important, and it's still important for you to also look at others. No matter what it might look like on the outside, remember that's a human being. So I gave him a hug. He gave me a hug. He said, thank you so much. I said, yeah, get yourself a cookie. I wanted him to get everything he needed to hold him over. So I paid for it, and then I was leaving. He said, and he wanted to give me another hug. And I gave him another hug. And I said, Walter, I'm going to be praying for you. I hope you get that job. And remember just to keep trusting God. He said, I will, ma'am. Thank you so much, Miss Tiffany. Thank you so much. And he walked away. When I say that interaction blessed me, I'm sure it blessed Walter. He said it was good. It blessed me so much because it was a reminder. I'm a Christian. You may or may not be a Christian, but this is a principle, even if you're not a Christian, that you can live by. It is better to give than to receive. It is better to help others than to seek. Again, in that moment, I happened to have some money in my wallet. I don't normally carry money, cash, but I had cash in my wallet. The joy that I experienced giving that to Walter. Even right now, when I think about that moment, my heart is warmed. It brings a smile to my face. That is why it's true. It is better to give than to receive. The same is true right now. I hope you enjoy my English lessons. I love teaching you. Why? Because I feel like it's another opportunity. I'm not physically hugging you, but it's another opportunity for me to help someone else. You're amazing. You are absolutely amazing. And right now you're in search of help for English, to improve your English. And I get the honor, I get the privilege of helping you on your journey. So when you see me smile, the smile is real. When you see me laugh during our classes, our lessons, it is real. Why? Because it is better to give than to receive. Thank you for letting me give back to you. Give to you in the way of helping you on your English journey. I'll talk to you next time.